Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. You reached over and hugged him. You teared up. You smiled gratefully. I reached over and hugged this man. You caught Derek's beaming grin before resting your chin on his shoulder. His laugh rumbled against your chest. Who would have thought this was where all those summers were leading us? Well, it actually isn't that surprising. You both let go and sat comfortably again. Derek smirked. Baxter wasn't kidding earlier when he said that the hotel was near the ceremony. The trip was already over and there wasn't another second to spare. Not able to remain contained for a second longer, you exited the car, went forward, and finally took in the first sight of your ceremony. Oh, wow. They did a great job. Oh, wow. The Redwood Forest. The place where you began to take larger steps into the wider world around you with your most important person right at your side even then. They did a great job with art. I'd love to see how all of the other venues looked, all dolled up like this. This is amazing. Cool shade from the canopy drifted down on you as earthy tinged gusts of winds came out from in between the massive trees. It was magical. Beyond the chairs for guests was an arch bursting with leaves and flowers as if it had sprouted from the ground itself. Everything was aglow. Even the speckles of lights breaking through the leaves seemed to sparkle more than usual. Hark! Your planner had immediately been informed of your arrival and came to greet you right on schedule.
Good afternoon.
How good to see you again, and so soon after the last time. He tilted his head in your direction casually while chuckling. You stood tall, smiling wholeheartedly, which was all you'd been able to do the entire morning. You could imagine how tired your face would be once it was over, but that was a problem for future you. Then all presence of casualness for the day left Baxter's poise. A bright fire lit up his dark eyes.
Now?
It's showtime. Let's get into proper positions. The wedding parties are being led up to the front, where they'll all stand by, while guests are getting directed to open chairs in the audience area.
Does that sound
Hark,
alright?
please go back further with me so you can be ready for the aisle walk. I'll send Cove over next. On the promise of being reunited with Cove, you let yourself be led away by Baxter. You only had to hold on a little longer, then you'd get to see him. You went back down the bend, and there was an eager hastiness to your pace. A corner was turned, separating you from the main scene. Good luck, Hark. I'll congratulate you when it's over. Baxter trusted you enough to handle the rest, and waved coyly over his shoulder as he left. He had to handle more of the arrangements behind the scenes so that you and Cove could have your spotlights. You stood there alone, foot tapping, resisting the urge to pace. You've never been more grateful for how quickly Baxter worked, when only a minute later, you heard someone approach. At long last, what you'd been anticipating came to be. You saw him again. Ooh, I can't wait to see what he looks like! Oh, look at him! Oh, he looks so cute. Oh, Cove. I like the flower, too. Cove Holden Angel. Cove Holden. Without a word, Cove lifted his arm for you to take. His blue eyes were crystal clear. You could see your future together, sparkling within them. Seeing him like that, completely ready to marry you, was heartbreaking. Breathtaking. You wrapped your arm with his gleefully, creating a secure link. The touch coaxed one of his precious wobbly smiles onto his face, though he still couldn't say a full word. While waiting in the wings, footsteps, the distant chatter of a crowd, the heavy breathing of your partner, and your own heartbeat pattered in your ears. Your eyes closed as you strained to hear the cue above the rest of the noise. But there was no need. You knew the moment had arrived when everything in the distance went silent. It even felt as though your heart froze in place, not wanting to be the one thing to interrupt. The first note was struck. Cove's hold on you tightened into a trembling squeeze. And that was all you needed to move forward. You began to walk forward with the love of your life. He was right there by your side, his legs were shaking too, and from the corner of your eyes you could see his cheeks were met with heavy tears. You never beamed brighter. You were an absolute sobbing mess of emotions. You smiled softly with tears gathered in the corners of your eyes. You were stone stiff from nerves. You were unsteady in your feet, afraid you might faint before even Cove had the chance. You had to resist the urge to drag him down the aisle to get to the end already. No, I'd say you smiled softly with tears gathering in the corners of your eyes. I'd get misty-eyed. I got misty-eyed. You watched as his mouth opened and closed, as if he was speaking to you. Though if he was saying actual words, they were too quiet for you to hear. The crowd was full of joyous smiles and loving glances, but no one made a move to distract you or Cove away from each other. You wouldn't have noticed if they tried. All you were aware of in the entire world was the wonderful man holding desperately onto your arm. And how, on one of your shared strides, his knee locked and Cove stumbled. You rooted yourself in place, pulling up against Cove to keep him from falling completely. He leaned onto you and you both swayed to the side, but he stayed on his feet. Good save. The two of you straightened yourselves out and kept going. You are equally committed to reaching the end of the aisle. It may not have been graceful, but to you it was beautiful. You made it, and you made it. When you arrived, you loosened your hold on one another to change positions. You stood in front of him face to face. Softly, Cove's lips parted again, and finally, at that time, you knew what it was your name.
Vaughn.
Hark, not Vaughn. He lifted one hand to wipe tears from the crinkle of your eye. He brought his head lower to be closer to yours, still caressing your face, even after those tears were gone. Your tears were soothed to stop. Brand new tears of joy fell. Your tears were soothed to stop, and you pressed his forehead against his. Brand new tears of joy fell, and you pressed your forehead against his. I said your tears were soothed to stop. The delicate way he held you brought so much comfort, you were able to feel more in control of your emotions. A hush came over the crowd as the religious figure began to speak. It was time. The ceremony speech flowed over you. You listened to each word, but sentences faded out of focus the second they had passed. It was like having a dream. Thoughts and feelings in your own mind held far more weight than anything outside of it. What did break through to you were Cove's bashful gestures, shuffling feet, quivering eyes, and palpable nervous energy that was barely swallowed down. Not one single movement went by unnoticed. And now, we will be holding the sand pouring ritual of the ceremony. Oh, at that, a couple of people assisting with the wedding carried over a small table by the ends and placed it down in front of you and Cove. On it were 2 glass jars filled with different colored sand and a large empty vase. Please select a jar. You chose the jar closest to you and held it with both hands. Cove picked the other up and automatically held the glass up to his face to get a better look at the sand. We do this to symbolize our journeys in this world. Your lives led you to cross paths, and you found great joy at each and every intersection. The jar each of you are holding represents the individual lives and choices you've made up until this very second. And with this pouring, the officiator gestured to the center vase, and you glanced at Cove instead. He gave you a reassuring nod, and you both began pouring the sand. Your journeys have intertwined, and like these grains of sand, they cannot be separated the same way ever again. You watched the sand slowly mix together. It was mesmerizing, and it wasn't until Cove whimpered loudly next to you that you felt jolted back into the ceremony. Once every grain of sand was inside the vase, Cove set its jar back down. You brought your hand back closer to your middle, but you kept the jar firmly in your grasp. You peeked at Cove out of the corner of your eye and saw that he was watching you too. The ends of his mouth curved, drawing a light-hearted chuckle from you. The assistant stepped forward to move the table to the side so that the ceremony could continue smoothly. You placed your jar next to Cove's and tried to commit the sight to memory. The table was delicately placed to the side of the arch. Your excitement bubbled in your chest at what would happen next. Before you could completely lose yourself in Cove's gaze, your attention crystallized in an instant. The religious figure had said vows. It struck Cove as well because his knees visibly locked from underneath him. In slow motion, he began to tip backwards. You instinctively grabbed onto his wrists, pulling on his sleeves in an attempt to keep your beloved from leaning further. Numerous sets of arms rose from all around as both of your wedding parties poised themselves to catch Cove if he fell their way. Derek took an extra step further by actually stepping forward. He made certain he could get a hold of his friend if he came down. See, this is why Derek's the hero. Derek's our hero. Cove regained control of his legs and caught himself by anchoring back on the ball of his right foot. He kept that firmly planted. He was still so absorbed in the moment that the notion to be embarrassed by his near faint didn't take up any space in his mind. It was as if it hadn't happened, at least for Cove. The religious figure, however, lifted a brow, assessing if your groom was physically capable of completing the ceremony. Aww. For all his trembling, Cove stood stiffly, a pillar that could not be moved. It was enough to appease your religious figure to continuing. The couple has chosen to prepare their own vows, and they will share them now. Cove, Holden, Angel, please begin. He took in a long breath through his nose. After so much build up to the wedding, and all the effort that it took to create it, this was the final hurdle for him, articulating his deepest feelings about you out loud. Cove looked into your brown eyes, searching for the words he needed. You waited, impressing as much encouragement as you could into your gaze. Finally, Cove began his vows.
Vaughn.
Hark, we met when we were 8 years old.
And, well, I wanted to run away to Nevada somehow that first summer I moved into the neighborhood. Truthfully, I had planned to do it before my dad and I had even made it to Sunset Bird. It didn't matter what it was going to be like. How could it ever be okay? But I saw you the first day I was there, and nothing went the way I thought. You changed everything in my life. He sunk lower into himself sheepishly and offered a goofy grin. I
well...
did still make an attempt in my child mind genius, but it was just going to be for a visit. It didn't work out though, because you told me, and I got because you told on me and I got caught, which was definitely for the best. You were the person I needed when I was so little and so lonely, and you still are the one I need right now. You and me are the couple of rotten eggs forever. Who are you calling rotten eggs, son? Every far-off image playing out in his mind brought further joy to Cove's features. He laughed nostalgically. You didn't let me get away with being selfish when I would act out. You were there for me when I was actually upset.
Thank you.
I got to have a childhood thanks to you. You didn't let me lose it all because I was sad. I had someone I could make those memories I cherish with. Making sandcastles, watching the clouds, catching fireflies, and everything else.
I'm so glad.
I'm still amazed how we kind of got together when we were just 13. He tugged at his collar while bouncing on his feet, the exact picture of a giddy schoolboy. You told me you liked me, and it was wonderful. But even still, when puberty happened, so many things seemed harder than before. I'm definitely glad you were around to help me survive it all. Especially my, in my hindsight, painfully obvious crush on you. That felt unbearable to me, and I bet it was probably frustrating to everyone who was watching, too. I could barely manage sitting next to you on a bed and sharing a smoothie with you. Thank God that hormonal nightmare did screw things up for me. Genuine relief came out from Cove in a sigh. But I don't know how I was supposed to act normal when you'd look at me so nicely with such beautiful eyes. He began to get taken into them as he spoke, his own eyes growing hazy and his smile wobbling. Cove shook his head to force himself out of his self-inflicted trance. That was the time I started sneaking out to visit you through the window. I wanted to be with you when I was happy, or when something was wrong. I couldn't stay away. Lucky for me, I didn't mind spending your days or nights in my company. With a light touch of wistfulness, Cove recalled experience after experience of those years. Going on trips together, being ones and big ones and small ones, just hanging around our houses in the neighborhood, talking about who we were as people. And that time there was a sun shower. We'd stick together during parties, and you could even make it fun for someone as socially awkward as I am. As he continued to reminisce, he chuckled adorably.
Well...
And I started getting closer with your family, too. Well, at least your mom's. Elizabeth wasn't exactly interested in being good friends when we were teens. I appreciate that you always put up with my parents and their wild plans, by the way. Cove ran a hand down his face tiredly, though the amused smile in his face wasn't wiped away. And speaking of wild plans, I sure got upset when you told me about how my dad offered you $20 to be friends when we were kids, huh? I'm sure the audience is laughing at that now. I feel bad now that I yelled at him. He wasn't trying to make things worse. It just meant a lot to me that the relationship between us was our own. I hated thinking about all the things outside of my control, all the ways the world was bigger than I knew. But I'm glad that I had the chance to talk to him about it in the end, and that we got to talk about it too. Thanks for being honest about it.
I remember.
I can still remember how badly I wanted to be grown up as an awkward tween. Then suddenly we graduated high school and it really was time to be an adult. Getting my first job, taking my first long drive without parents, accepting how small our little town was in the grand scheme of things. Just trying to figure out what I was even going to do with my life. I was lost, and all I wanted was to make sure I didn't lose what mattered when things had to change. Most of all, you. You were my special someone. That was when I had fallen in love with you. You were the first person I was able to open up to about my sexuality, when I finally knew for sure what that was. And you were the one who could tell me when I was wrong. His speech of all that he treasured about you went on in an uninterrupted stream. He couldn't stop himself. I could talk to you about anything, like the accident when I got my scar. I knew you would understand. And as mundane and drudging adult life could be, I had a source of relief from it because you had been around. You'd let me have tastes of your food and always gave the best gifts. You loved me even though I am not a cool merman who could take you on a magical adventure. Yeah, I don't need a merman taking me on a magical adventure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for waiting.
And you lived with how long it took for me to be able to do anything romantic. I was feeling a lot and didn't do great at managing it, but I was so clingy too. I never wanted to be apart then. I think I'm a little more of a big boy now about it now. Maybe?
Ah,
Maybe. A little. You just... He at long last stopped to breathe, before his emotion-driven attempt to convey himself continued in full force. You make me happy in ways no one else ever could. It was the happiest moment of my life when you proposed to me until now anyway. I couldn't believe you wanted to be with me as much as I wanted to be with you. And well, a lot has happened, huh? We're finally adults. We're at our own wedding.
it's okay.
We made it through it all the months and months growing up and through making this day happen. You're such a charming human being. I don't want to try to imagine how many tears you've wiped away for me in all these years. You helped me have the confidence to grow into a man, and you can still make me feel like a kid again. I like that line a lot. With you, nothing ever really ends. It just begins again in a new way. And basically what I'm trying to say is, no matter how hard I try, I can never thank you enough for being mine and letting me be yours. Cove wept heavily, no longer able to stay above the wave of emotions that opening himself up so fully had wrought.
I love you.
I love you so much, Hark, and he futilely wiped the sleeve against his eyes. Every tear the fabric caught was immediately replaced. Those are my vows. I don't know how you're supposed to end them. That was a lot, Cove. But it was a lot. It was by far the longest set of vows that I've ever heard at a wedding. But it came from his heart, which I'm very proud of. And I really like how he referenced a whole lot of things that happened via the moments throughout the game, which is really cool. So, that was awesome. That was so well done, Cove. I am so proud of you that you were able to... It's hard doing vows, being up on the spot, and he just went for it. He just said what was in his heart, which is exactly what he needed to do, and hopefully that made it easier. You giggled at the way he closed it out. It was just like him. You struggled to keep your own feelings in check. You're absolutely stunned by Cove's vows. You giggled at the way he closed it out. It was just like him. And you squinted your eyes, and your eyes were glossy, and you'd shed a tear, and you were crying too, and you were bawling too. And your eyes were glossy. Thank you, Cove. Hark, you may say yours. The religious figure had all but disappeared from your mind. All that you had been aware of was Cove, but that requests couldn't be ignored. Now you would have to take on the endeavor of explaining everything Cove was to you and everything he'd been to you throughout knowing him, almost your entire life. You chose to say, I want to thank you. I promise. I adore. Cove, all I want is to tell who you are to me. I'm gonna say, Cove, all I want is to tell who you are to me. You're my beloved crybaby. You're a wonderful man. You're my precious ocean boy. You're my sunshine. You're my soulmate. You're my Cove. You're a wonderful man. And I know we were meant to be together. And you're all the one I'll love for the rest of my life. And I'll be there for you no matter what. And I'm the luckiest person in the world that I get to say that. And you're the best thing that's ever happened. And you were too emotional to say anything else. No. And I'll be there for you no matter what. Oh my God. Cove covered his face with trembling hands. He was murmuring, crying, and all around about to pass out again. I thought I would be able to say more. Can I say more than that? Your religious figure nodded in content, accepting those vows as your newest sworn oath to the man who was already your husband. Can I say more than that? I thought I would be able to say more. I want to thank you for really getting to know me, for helping me feel comfortable in my body, for sharing your parents, for being brave. Okay, I like this one better. For being brave for me when I was scared, for remembering things about me, even stuff that wouldn't matter to anyone else, for always thinking that I was worth a gold medal, for being there for me when I found out about my biological parents, for giving me so many piggyback rides, for all the times you insisted I go to bed, for really getting to know me, and for loving me for me. For giving me so many piggyback rides. The Cove Express is the best form of transportation. For always thinking that I was worth a gold medal, even back when we were kids. For being babe for me when I was scared. Yeah, you're my hero. for sharing your parents. They're a real perk of being with you. For remembering things about me, even stuff that wouldn't matter to anyone else. That is really one of Kove's best traits. It matters a lot to me. For all the times you insisted I get to bed. You're a very stubborn gentleman. For being there for me when I found out about my biological parents. That was important, and I'll never forget your support then. He never really made me feel comfortable in my body. I always felt comfortable in my body. And besides that, yeah, okay, good. This is much better. Like, okay, besides that, I promise to never stop trying to make you happy, to cherish everything you've given me, to let you have joint ownership of my shell collection, to always leave a window open for you, to continue letting you have taste of my food, to comfort you when your anxieties make you scared, to still love you even as we both, to wait as long as you need for everything, to wipe your tears when they fall, to set you a house directly on the beach, to wear an anklet on request whenever you want, to sit on your chest again, to go along with the spontaneous adventures. To never stop trying to make you happy, to continue letting you have taste of my food, to comfort you when your anxieties make you scared, to always leave, to wear an anklet on request whenever you want, to wipe your tears when they fall, to sit on your chest again, to wait as long as you need for everything, to get you to a house directly on the beach someday, now to go along with your spontaneous dawn adventures, to cherish everything you've given me, to let you have joint ownership of my shell collection, to still love you as you both continue to grow and change, to always leave a window open for you. And along with that, I adore... Okay, I did it wrong. I jumped to the end, so here. I adore your laugh and your smile, the way you angrily sip at your drinks, how you rub your arm when you're nervous, how easy you are to fluster, how excited you get about food. I don't adore how clingy he is. If I'm being 100% honest, that is probably... And I think this doesn't surprise anyone. That's the least attractive thing about Kove, is because I don't like clingy people. Neither does my husband. So we're in agreement to this. So if it was in real life, Kove and I would not really be compatible, at least not for very long, because the clinginess would get old really fast for me. However, in this game, my character is, is of course in love with Kove, but I don't think he would say how clingy you are, because I don't think he necessarily thinks that he adores it. He's probably neutral. He's probably like neutral about how clingy he is. The how you're somehow always in a mess. I'm not gonna say that. The awkward way you tried flirting, that you're so open with your emotions, that you've been such a beach bum ever since you were born, that adorable way you text, that you're such a troublemaker, and you simply in general. Kove's blush had crept all the way back to his neck after you let yourself get carried away, listing every little detail about him that charmed you. You're my beloved crybaby, you're a wonderful man. And I'll be there for you no matter what. Oh my god. Kove covered his face with trembling hands. He was laughing, crying, and all around about to pass out again. Even when I gave him the really tiny vow, he gave this ginormous, 10-minute, it wasn't 10 minutes, but 5-minute vow, and I gave him a 30-second one, and he was still like, oh my god, oh come on, game. That was really funny. But anyway, Kove covered his face with trembling hands. He was about to pass out. Your religious figure nodded in content, accepting those vows as your newest sworn oath to the man who was already your husband. Kove Holden Angel, do you take Hark Holden Angel to be your lawful wedded husband? To let his hands fall, ready to face you directly. He let his hands fall, ready to face you directly. Kove's shaking, dripping wet eyes stayed locked to yours. And with the confidence of a man who'd been waiting for this moment for years, he answered with complete surety.
I do.
It was absolutely heart-stopping, but your turn to respond had come. And do you, Hark Holden Angel, take Kove Holden Angel to be your lawful wedded husband? How hilarious would it be if they were like, no, actually. I know, the programmers would not have done that, but yeah. I do. What he said, you nodded certainly. I'll say, no. What's the difference between these two? I'll just say I do. Kove's smile was radiant, and his tears were constant. You'd sincerely made him happier than anything ever had. Your best man and Cove's best man stepped forward. They each held out a small box that contained a wedding band. My best man is in Derek. Get his name. Cove's hands shook as he reached for the tiny treasure chest. With a focused furrow to his brow, he accepted the rose gold ring. You gladly offered your hand to Cove. He cradled it gently in one of his own. For a few seconds, all he could do was stare at your skin. Cove was so still for a moment, but then he used his free hand to bring the band towards your fingertips. Oh, look at that rose gold ring that with the simple... I'm glad they showed the ring. He carefully slid the ring to its proper place on your finger. Your gaze locked into it, utterly amazed. And I like how they showed the nails, too. I bet you the nails... That's why they asked about the nails, because they wanted to be able to show that in the picture. Clever game, clever. Swallowing thickly, Cove raised his hand out for you. You held it in return and brushed your thumb across his palm. It was your turn. With you received the matching ring from its box. It slid into Cove's finger beautifully. He gasped under his breath, fixating on the ring. You tenderly squeezed his hand, and Cove finally met your eyes again. His cheeks he held with you with an electrifying stare. You were in awe of the whole moment. Then by the power vested in me by the state of California, I pronounce you husband and husband. You can now kiss. Cove's knees may have started knocking together once more, but his gaze was nothing but eager. You reached for each other in a loving kiss. You kissed Cove on the cheek, you kissed Cove on the forehead, you threw yourself into Cove's arms and kissed passionately. Oh yeah, passionately. Waiting for even a second longer was impossible. You sprang forward like a shot and tangled yourself around him. Your husband stumbled, but he was able to keep a proper hold of you as you knew he would. Your lips connected with Cove's as in an urgent expression of your love for him. He returned the kiss just as needily. You used the thumb to carefully push away the tears still clinging to his eyelashes. After, your faces shifted away just a hair's breadth so you could see one another fully. His expression was wholly adoring, and you could still feel his warmth lingering. The crowd erupted with cheers and applause around you. Giddy, you ducked your head towards Cove's shoulders and laughed. All around you, confetti rained down like delicate flower petals. Your smile widened, watching your friends and family excitedly throw it into the air in celebration. Peeking over at Cove, you realized that he was barely paying any attention to the jubilance around you both. Instead, his gaze was solely fixated on you. He gently took your hand. He linked his arm around yours. He walked by your side. He scooped you into his arms. You scooped Cove up into your arms. I'll have him scoop me into his arms. The corner of his mouth pulled into a bent smile, and then Cove swept you off your feet. You giggled while he secured his hold on you. Beaming, it's the best ride, it's the Cove Express. Beaming, you loosely wrapped your arms around his neck. His skin reddened, and you took the opportunity to rest a hand on his cheek and plant a kiss on the other one. You went down the aisle gleefully. As you passed by your friends and family, you caught several thumbs up, proud nods, and cheery waves. Some were even still clapping. Sniffling, your vision threatened to fill with tears after witnessing more than a handful of people dabbing their eyes with tissues. When you briefly came close enough to Mr. Holden, he patted Cove on the shoulder. Despite his weepy expression, you could tell that he had the greatest pride for his son. You waved at everyone. You blew kisses to the crowd. You shyly covered your face. Thank you. You kissed Cove in the neck. You smiled. I would have said thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of our special day. Your voice joined in with the noise of the celebration. Anyone that caught your attention, you cheerily yelled out your thanks. After leaving the ceremony in late afternoon, it was time for wedding photos. You and Cove met up with the wedding party and the photographer, while the other guests headed over to the reception spot. The excursion was filled with fun and laughter, while the photographer set out to get the ideal shots. Cove lovingly held your face, not afraid to show his affection in front of the camera for a change. Good on you, Cove, good on you. His thumb brushed lightly across your cheek, and then he pressed his forehead to yours. His breath was warm on your skin, and you closed your eyes shut to relish in his love. When he pulled away, you were speechless. But you also had a feeling that was going to be one of the best shots of the lot. When the sun began to set about an hour later, you knew it was time to rejoin with everyone else. And so you eagerly got back into the car, again, to finally see the second location. Oh, there's the aquarium. Lovely, it's so beautiful. You and Cove entered through the main doors and into the reception space. There your friends and family were patiently waiting for this moment. The room filled with familiar cheers, whistles, and applause at your arrival. As the noise lessened, you began to hear various calls of congrats and welcome backs. The love emanating from your friends and family was palpable. Baxter made his way to the center of the room and began to gesture people back. The rest of the staff followed his lead and made space in the crowd. When the path ahead cleared out, you took a deep breath. It was time. The beginning note of your first dance song played. You heard a few of the guests speak in hushed tones, anticipation rising as the melody kicked in.